Trust is a fragile thing. It can be built over years, cherished like precious glass, only to shatter in a single heartbeat. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come with grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it happens in the space of one breath, one step, 1 second that changes everything forever. This is the story of Michael and Jessica, childhood friends whose bond seemed unbreakable until the moment when survival instinct met human nature. Michael Thompson first met Jessica Williams on the playground of Lincoln Elementary when they were both 7 years old. She was sitting alone under the old oak tree, reading a book while other kids played around her. Something about her quiet intensity drew him in. Maybe it was the way she seemed completely absorbed in her own world, or how she didn't seem to need anyone else's approval. "What are you reading?" he'd asked, plopping down beside her in the shade. "Charlotte's Web," she'd replied without looking up. "It's about friendship." From that moment, they were inseparable. Through elementary school, scraped knees and middle, school awkwardness, through high school heartbreaks and college uncertainties, Michael and Jessica were constants in each other's lives. They shared everything: dreams, fears, inside jokes that made them laugh until their stomachs hurt. Michael was the dreamer, always reaching for something bigger. Jessica was the practical one, keeping his feet on the ground while supporting his ambitions. When Michael decided to pursue journalism, Jessica was there cheering him on. When Jessica chose law school, Michael helped her study for the LSAT until 3 a.m, fueled by coffee and determination. After college, they both moved to Seattle, sharing a cramped apartment while Michael freelanced and Jessica worked at a small firm. They were broke but happy, ordering pizza on Friday nights and spending Sundays hiking in the Cascades. Their friendship had evolved into something deeper. Not romance, but a connection that felt more permanent than most marriages. "We're like an old married couple," Jessica would joke, "except we don't have to pretend to like each other's cooking." Michael would laugh and reply, "Thank God for that. Your attempt at lasagna still haunts my dreams." The years passed. Jessica made partner at her firm. Michael landed a position at the Seattle Times. They moved into separate apartments, but remained each other's emergency contact, the first person they called with good news or bad. Jessica was there when Michael's father died. Michael held Jessica through her mother's cancer battle. By their early 30s, they'd weathered every storm life had thrown at them. Their friendship felt unbreakable, tested by time and strengthened by shared experiences. They had that rare thing, absolute trust. Michael knew Jessica would never let him down, and she felt the same about him. That's what made what happened next so devastating. The opportunity came through Michael's work. He'd been investigating a series of corporate cover-ups, following paper trails, and interviewing whistleblowers. The story was explosive. Environmental violations, safety cover-ups, millions in bribes. It was the kind of investigative piece that could make careers, but it was also dangerous. The corporations involved had deep pockets and few scruples. Michael had been getting threatening calls, finding his car keyed, noticing strangers following him. The stress was eating at him, but he couldn't let the story go. Too many people had been hurt. Justice mattered more than his personal safety. That's when his editor offered him a way out, a position at their London bureau. It was a promotion, a chance to work on international stories, and most importantly, it would get him out of Seattle until the heat died down. "You've got 24 hours to decide," his editor told him. "The offer expires tomorrow at noon. We need someone who can start immediately." Michael's first call was to Jessica. She listened as he explained the situation, the opportunity, the timeline. "London," she said thoughtfully. "That's huge, Michael. You have to take it. But I'd be leaving everything behind. Leaving you. Hey." Her voice was warm, reassuring. "Remember what we promised each other in college? We'd never let fear hold us back from our dreams. This is your dream, isn't it?" It was, Deep down, Michael had always wanted to be a foreign correspondent, to tell stories that mattered on a global scale. But the thought of leaving Jessica, of being an ocean away from his best friend, felt like tearing off a piece of his soul. "I don't know if I can do it alone," he admitted. "You won't be alone," Jessica said firmly. "I'll be cheering you on from here, and we'll video chat so much you'll get sick of my face. Besides, maybe I'll even visit. I've always wanted to see London." They spent that night walking around Green Lake, talking about the decision until Michael felt confident. Jessica was right. This was his chance. He would regret it forever if he didn't take it. The next morning, Michael was supposed to meet his editor at noon to give his final answer. But first, he wanted to handle some practical matters. He needed to arrange for someone to sublet his apartment, transfer his utilities, cancel his gym membership, all the mundane details of uprooting a life. Jessica offered to help. They spent the morning running errands, with Jessica taking notes on her phone and making calls to various service providers. She was, as always, organized and efficient, turning what could have been a stressful morning into something almost enjoyable. At 11:45 a.m., they arrived at the Seattle Times building together. Michael felt nervous but excited, his acceptance letter tucked in his jacket pocket. Jessica squeezed his arm as they walked through the lobby. "You've got this," she said. "This is your moment." The elevator was crowded, but they managed to squeeze in together. Michael pressed the button for the 15th floor, where his editor's office was located. As they rose through the building, Jessica seemed unusually quiet, staring at her phone with an intense expression. "Everything okay?" Michael asked. "Just checking emails," she said, not looking up. The elevator dinged at the 10th floor, and several people got off. Michael and Jessica moved toward the back to make room. That's when Michael noticed Jessica's phone screen. She wasn't checking emails. She was looking at job listings, international correspondent positions. A cold realization began to form in his mind, but he pushed it away. Jessica was a lawyer, not a journalist. She couldn't. The elevator reached the 15th floor. The doors opened with their familiar mechanical whisper. Michael stepped forward, then paused, turning back to say something to Jessica about meeting for lunch after his meeting. But Jessica wasn't behind him anymore. She was moving past him, her shoulder brushing against his as she stepped through the doorway first. For a moment, Michael was confused. Why was Jessica getting off on his floor? Then he saw her walking quickly toward his editor's office, and understanding hit him like a physical blow. "Jessica, wait," he called out, lunging forward. But the elevator doors were already closing. Michael's fingertips grazed the cold metal as the doors sealed shut with a soft thud. Through the narrow gap, he caught a glimpse of Jessica's face. Not the friend he'd known for 25 years, but a stranger wearing her features. There was determination there, and something else. Guilt, maybe. Or triumph. The elevator began to descend, carrying Michael away from his future. He frantically pressed the button for the 15th floor, but the elevator had other stops to make first. Each floor felt like an eternity. 14th floor. A woman with coffee and newspapers got on. 13th floor. 2 men in suits discussing quarterly reports. 12th floor. The elevator filled with people heading to lunch. Michael's phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "I'm sorry, but I need this more than you do." Finally, the elevator returned to the 15th floor. Michael burst through the opening doors and sprinted down the hallway, his dress shoes slipping on the polished floor. He reached his editor's office just as the door was closing. Through the frosted glass, he could see 2 silhouettes, his editor and Jessica. He could hear muffled voices, Jessica's familiar laugh. She was charming him, using the same wit and intelligence that had made Michael fall in friend love with her all those years ago. Michael raised his hand to knock, then stopped. What would he say? That his best friend had betrayed him? That she'd stolen his opportunity? It would sound petty, desperate, unprofessional. More importantly, he realized with sick certainty that it was already too late. Jessica had always been persuasive. She had 5 minutes. 5 minutes where she could present herself as the better candidate, explain away Michael's absence, and secure the position for herself. Michael pressed his ear to the door, straining to hear the conversation inside. "Michael Thompson was supposed to be here," his editor was saying. "Michael asked me to come in his place." Jessica replied smoothly. "He's had some family issues come up. His mother's taken a turn for the worse. He didn't want to leave Seattle, right now. But he knew how important this opportunity was. He thought I might be a good fit instead." The lie was so smooth, so believable, that Michael almost believed it himself for a moment. His mother was fine. They'd had lunch together just 2 days ago. But his editor wouldn't know that. "Your background is in law, not journalism," his editor said. "That's true, but I've been Michael's unofficial research partner for years. I know how to dig for information, how to build a case, how to interview reluctant sources. My legal background would actually be an asset for investigative work. I understand contracts, regulations, the legal implications of the stories you'd want me to cover." Michael could hear the conviction in her voice, the passion. She wasn't just stealing his opportunity. She was making it her own, transforming it into something that fit her skills and ambitions. "This is very irregular," his editor said, but Michael could hear the interest in his voice. "The best stories always are," Jessica replied. Michael never knocked on that door. He stood there for another 10 minutes, listening to Jessica systematically dismantle the life they'd built together and reconstruct it around herself. She used their shared experiences, their joint adventures, their collective knowledge, presenting it all as her own qualifications. When he finally walked away, his legs felt like lead. Each step echoed in the empty hallway, a countdown to the end of everything he'd believed about friendship, loyalty, and trust. The official call came 3 hours later. Jessica had gotten the position. She would be leaving for London in 2 weeks. Michael sat in his apartment staring at his phone, waiting for Jessica to call and explain, waiting for her to apologize, to break down and admit she'd made a terrible mistake, waiting for his best friend to come back. The call never came. Instead, he got a text at 9 p.m. "I know you must hate me right now. I know this looks terrible. But you don't understand how desperate I was. The firm is laying people off. I was going to be next. I couldn't tell you because I didn't want you to worry or make decisions based on my problems. When I saw this opportunity, I knew it was my only chance. I'm sorry it had to be this way." Michael stared at the message for a long time before typing back, 25 years of friendship, and you couldn't trust me enough to tell me the truth?" Jessica's response came immediately. "You would have given up the job for me. You would have stayed to help me through this. I couldn't let you sacrifice your dreams for mine, so you sacrificed them for me instead." This time the response took longer. I thought you'd understand eventually. I thought you'd forgive me." Michael turned off his phone without responding. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and hollow days. Michael tried to maintain his routine, work, gym, grocery shopping, but everything felt mechanical. He found himself reaching for his phone to text Jessica, then remembering. He'd catch himself saving up funny stories to tell her later, then feel the fresh ache of betrayal. Friends tried to help. His co-workers offered sympathy. His family rallied around him. But none of them understood the depth of what he'd lost. It wasn't just about the job, though that stung. It was about discovering that the person he'd trusted most in the world was capable of cold, calculated betrayal. Jessica left Seattle on a Tuesday morning. Michael knew because she'd sent him her flight information, maybe hoping he'd come to see her off. He didn't. Instead, he went to Green Lake and walked the path they'd traveled together hundreds of times, trying to understand how someone could share so much of your life and remain fundamentally unknowable. The months passed. Michael threw himself into his work, producing some of the best investigative pieces of his career. The corporate corruption story he'd been working on eventually broke, thanks to other journalists who picked up where he'd left off. It was nominated for a Pulitzer. Michael felt proud of the work, but hollow about the recognition. Jessica's bylines began appearing in international publications. Her pieces were good. Really good. She had a knack for finding human stories within complex political situations, for making foreign events feel immediate and personal. Michael recognized her voice in every article, the same intelligence and empathy that had drawn him to her as a 7-year-old boy. It made the betrayal worse, somehow. If she'd failed, if she'd been incompetent, Michael could have told himself that justice had been served. But Jessica was thriving, building the career that was supposed to be his, and doing it well. The first anniversary of the elevator incident, as Michael had come to think of it, passed quietly. Michael had expected to feel angry, but instead, he felt tired. Bone-deep, soul-weary tired. He'd spent a year trying to understand what had happened, replaying every moment of their friendship for signs he'd missed. He found plenty. Small moments of selfishness he'd overlooked. Times when Jessica had gotten what she wanted through manipulation, rather than honesty. Instances where she'd presented his ideas as her own in casual conversation. He'd dismissed these as quirks, evidence of her ambition, rather than warning signs of deeper character flaws. But he also remembered genuine moments of love and support. Jessica holding him when his father died. Her fierce defense of him when colleagues criticized his work. The way she'd celebrated his successes as if they were her own. Those memories were real too, and they made the betrayal more complex, more painful. Maybe that was the hardest part, accepting that people could be multiple things simultaneously. Jessica had been a true friend and a calculating opportunist. She had loved him and betrayed him. Both versions of her were real, and Michael had to find a way to reconcile them. 2 years after London, Michael received an unexpected package. Inside was a book, Jessica's first published work, a collection of her international reporting. There was a note tucked inside the front cover. "Michael, I know you probably won't read this, but I needed you to see it. Every story in here exists, because of what I learned from you, because of the foundation we built together. I know that doesn't excuse what I did, but I wanted you to know that our friendship wasn't meaningless to me, even if I destroyed it. You made me a better person, even if I wasn't good enough to deserve your trust. I hope someday you can forgive me, not because I deserve it, but because holding on to anger is hurting you more than it's hurting me. Jay." Michael set the book aside without opening it. But 3 weeks later, he found himself reading it cover to cover. Jessica's writing was beautiful, insightful, exactly what he would have expected from her. She'd dedicated the book to the friend who taught me to see stories everywhere, even when I was too blind to see the most important one. That night, Michael wrote his first email to Jessica in 2 years. It was short. "I read the book. It's good work. I'm proud of you." He stared at the message for an hour before deleting it unsent. Instead, he wrote, "I read the book. I understand why you took the opportunity. I don't forgive you, but I don't hate you anymore either. I hope London is everything you wanted it to be." This time, he hit send. Jessica's response came the next morning. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Michael realized he'd been holding his breath for 2 years, waiting for this moment of release. The anger was still there, but it no longer consumed him. The sadness remained, but it had softened into something more like grief, mourning for the friendship they'd lost, the trust that could never be rebuilt. the future that had died in the space of 1 second. He understood now that forgiveness wasn't about excusing what Jessica had done. It was about accepting that she was human, flawed, capable of both love and betrayal. It was about choosing to carry the good memories alongside the bad, rather than letting the betrayal poison everything that had come before. Most importantly, Michael realized that the elevator doors closing wasn't really the end of their story. It was the beginning of his understanding of what friendship really meant, what trust really cost, and what it meant to be human in a world where everyone was fighting their own battles, sometimes at the expense of the people they loved most. In the end, we all have moments where we must choose between loyalty and survival, between others' dreams and our own. The space of 1 second can reveal who we really are when everything is on the line. Sometimes we're the one left standing outside the elevator, and sometimes we're the one stepping through the door. The question isn't whether we'll face these moments. It's whether we'll learn from them, whether we'll grow, and whether we'll choose forgiveness over bitterness when the dust settles. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, subscribe for more stories that explore the moments that define us, 1 second at a time.